Hey friends! So 2021 was a big reading year for me. The first actual reading year I've had since like 5th grade. And one thing I've seen a bunch of YouTubers doing that I wanted to try out is the yearly survey. This comes from Perpetual Page Turner's blog, and it's a list of categories to just come up with a book that fits that category. Kind of like an award show, but not really. So I've got the list pulled up on my computer here, and I've got the books selected that we're going to talk about. Keep in mind, there are like about 20 categories that I'm going to talk about, and I read like about 30 books this past year, so I'm going to repeat a few, and we're just going to talk about it and have fun. Let's dive right in. I'm going to try and be quick with each book so that this isn't like a massive video. Number 1, best book you read in 2021. Gonna have to go with The Way of Kings. If you've been following me on Book Talk and talking to me about books this past year, this comes as no surprise. I really liked this book a lot. I say best book because it kicks off the best series that I think I've read so far. This did something really special for me in getting me back into fantasy and really just exciting me about books, on top of being just a fantastic book on its own. So I give Brandon Sanderson's The Way of Kings best book that I read this year. Number 2 is book you were most excited about and thought you were going to love more, but didn't. And that's going to go to Catch-22. So I didn't actually finish this book yet. I really want to. I really want to read this. There's a reason I started it. There's a reason I was annotating it. And I'm just super excited about it. And also, it's just so hard for me to get through. It kind of put me into a reading slump when I read it because I was just like not that into it. But I really like it. I love the concept. I love the satire. And I enjoy reading it, but it's just kind of slow. And it just isn't hooking me necessarily. So thought I was going to love it and haven't really been able to love because I just have been so slow reading it, I think. Definitely want to come back to this and read it eventually, but I was a little disappointed that I wasn't more like hooked by it, I guess. Okay, most surprising in a good way or bad way. I think most surprising to me was This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Mohtar and Max Gladstone. So I'd only ever really heard of this book through Book Talk, which love Book Talk, and also I thought it was going to be one of those like kind of more fluffy books, and I think it could be enjoyed by that audience, but it was so much like deeper and more beautifully written than I expected, and that was surprising to me. I wasn't expecting that, and just loved it. I've read a bunch of time travel stories in the past, so there were some parts about it that I thought were predictable, but in general, I loved the book, and it surprised me because I just was not expecting it to be just so atmospheric, and like it's like the epitome of soft sci-fi, and has just an amazing effect because of it. Number 4, book you pushed the most people to read, and they did. That one again is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I recommended this to so many people just because I was so excited about it. Looking back, I probably should have been more discerning about who I recommended it to. I think I was just like, read it. And some people I recommended to it loved it. Some people aren't as into it. But, you know, I really enjoyed it and recommended it to a ton of people. I think 2 or 3 people, no, 3 people I recommended it to, either read it or are currently reading it, and that's a success in my book. Gosh, it's a thick book, it's intimidating, so I'm surprised that I got 3 people to read it. That's kind of cool. Number 5 is best series you started in 2021, best sequel, best series ender. The only series I really read was Stormlight Archive, and I've already talked a bunch about that, so I'm going to move on. Number 6, favorite new author you discovered in 2021. I wouldn't say I really discovered this author this year, but it's the first time I read this author, Tolkien. I read The Hobbit, and I've been aware of Tolkien for most of my life, but this is the first time I actually picked up a book of his. The Hobbit is like completely a comfort read. It was like, you know, warm, fuzzy fantasy vibes, and I very much enjoyed spending the time with these characters and in this world. Number 7, best book from a genre you don't typically read / was out of your comfort zone. Not really typical for me to pick up an essay collection. I'm more into like, you know, one long story kind of thing, or a bunch of short stories, but like rarely nonfiction essays. And I really, really liked The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. It was optimistic, but not in like a you shouldn't be sad kind of way, in a more thought out way. Green spent the majority of the pandemic writing this and published it in 2021. And a way I would sum it up is like, he thought about many, many aspects of life and analyzed the crap out of them and walked away with an optimistic message. It's not just like blind optimism, and it's not all good, but he really presents a hopeful view of the world and the current state of it. So I very much recommend reading this. You don't even have to read the whole thing all in one go if you don't want to. Since it's a book of essays, you can just kind of pick at it and read the ones that you want if that's what you're feeling. Number 8 is the most action-packed, unput-downable book of the year. And for that, I'm also going to say The Hobbit. I found myself reading this just every chance I could get because I think the pacing was fantastic. There was never a moment where I thought things were dragging or rushing or anything. The pacing was phenomenal, and I just always felt like there was something cool happening. So I really liked that about it, and it kept me turning the pages for sure. Number 9, book you read in 2021 that you would be most likely to reread next year. The book I'm going to say for this category, I read for the first time in 5th grade, and I read it again last year, and I read it again in 2021, and I'm starting to enjoy it as a tradition of just rereading this book, and that is Warriors Into the Wild. Just going back and reading this is super nostalgic for me. I'll probably be reading this again in 2022 just for those childhood vibes and feeling like a kid reading Warriors. So very much enjoying this as a new little tradition, I guess. Number 10, favorite cover of a book you read in 2020. So this one's going to go to Dune. My favorite color is orange. I think this graphic design is pretty dope. The spine looks cool. The back looks cool. The front looks cool. It's one of those books that I feel like I like to be seen reading it. There's a stereotype of like, don't judge a book by its cover, that kind of thing. But when you're trying to read more, it really helps when it looks cool that you're holding it. So I really like the way this one looks. It goes with my sweatshirt, kind of. That shade of orange is similar to this. It goes. Number 11, most memorable character of 2021. So I didn't start reading this series in 2021, but I read a few of the books of the series this year, and I just love this character so much, and I relate very, very much to it, and that is Murderbot from the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. If you don't know, Murderbot is an introverted AI construct that was designed to be like a security guard type of being. It's just such a unique character that it's a character that I find myself thinking about more than most other characters, because I'm like, sometimes if I just want to like go in my room and put up my hood and hide, it's a kind of a Murderbot moment. I don't know. But really, really like this character and find myself thinking about it quite a bit. Most beautifully written book I read in 2021. This one's also going to go to This Is How You Lose the Time War by El Matar and Gladstone. Like I mentioned before, there are times where it borders on poetry. It actually took me a little bit to get used to that style of writing, where it's just so descriptive that sometimes I didn't know what was literally happening. I was just taking in what was metaphorically happening. But once I got used to it and just sort of how that writing flows, it was so vivid and beautiful. Okay, we're back. The camera died. I realized that the fire wasn't actually filling the screen, so that's better. Anyway, number 13, most thought-provoking / life-changing book of 2020. I think for this one, I'm going to say Illusions by Richard Bach. This book follows a character who meets a messiah who doesn't want to be a messiah and just does other stuff. And it's really cool. It talks a lot about life and the meaning of life and how one ought to live, how to be happy. And it just provides some really cool ideas and fantastic quotes for enjoying life, living your life. And it's short too. Got me to think a lot, and I'm definitely going to reread this at some point to just remind myself of what's in it. I think this is a very valuable book. Number 14, a book you can't believe you waited until 2021 to finally read. For this one, I'm going to say The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. This one was recommended to me by different teachers throughout the years. It tells the stories of the members of the Joy Luck Club, which is a group of women who gets together to play mahjong, and their daughters. It covers stories from when the mothers were children back in China, and then their immigration to the U.S., and then their lives in the U.S., as well as the stories of their daughters growing up in the U.S. And it's all told from first-person perspective, which is a pretty cool choice, and I liked it a lot. I think there were times where there's very little overarching plot. It's more just a series of these stories, and you get to see how they interconnect. So that was a little bit difficult in terms of keeping me reading it all the way through, but I thought it was, really good. And I'm surprised that I waited this long to read it, considering how long I've been interested in in Chinese culture and history and experiences. So number 15, favorite passage or quote from a book you read in 2020. This is a difficult one because I didn't write down that many quotes, but for the first couple books that I read this year, I wrote them down in this little book that Catherine gave me last year, and there's a little space for you to write quotes from the books you enjoyed. So I'll just read a few of those for you. So from Illusions by Richard Bach, which I just talked about, here's a test to find whether your mission on Earth is finished. If you're alive, it isn't. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I just like this one for the imagery and creativity of it. The ships hung in the sky in much the same way that bricks don't. And this one from The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. People see in stories what they're looking for. Very simple, but very, very true, I think. Number 16, shortest and longest book you read in 2020. Shortest book is a tie, actually. Both Apocalypse Taco by Nathan Hale and Illegal by, I think it's Ian Colfer and Andrew Duncan. These are both, I believe, 126 pages. And they're also both graphic novels. This one was recommended to me by my 8 and 9-year-old campers, and it was a very fun one. Kind of like weirdly disturbing for a children's book, but also still a children's book. Way more cerebral than I'd usually expect for a children's book. And this was assigned for one of my classes about migration. This one's based on true stories. This one is like sci-fi. And then the longest book I read, I don't know page-wise whether this is the longest, but it's a really long one, and it also took me by far the longest to actually read. And that is Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson, the Stormlight Archive number 4. And I think that's where I'm going to end it. There are other questions, but those are the ones I'm most excited about, and I'm just going to call it there. So here's to another great year of reading in 2022. I'm very much looking forward to doing this again and seeing next year's answers as well. So thank you for watching. If you like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe and check me out on my other social media. And with that, thanks for watching.